Thank you very much, little voice. Well, basically, Will, I'll just hand over to you. So I basically explained you started as an actor, director, producer, and tweenies. Someone was very excited about the tweenies. I won't say who it was.
Sure. I can't tell from looking at the three of you. I can't tell who's the most excited.
So what I'll do, I'll switch my camera off here just to save the broadband or whatever they call it, the bandwidth.
Your bandwidth.
But I'm still here. And then I say normally we take a break. Normally, if we start at 7, we take a break at 8:50 minutes. But just play it whichever suits you, mate. Really.
No worries. No worries.
All right. So I'll let you go. I'll be here anyway. I'll just switch my camera off. Thanks, Will.
You'll be omnipresent.
Oh yeah, you'll hear this voice come from somewhere.
You can do a good God voice. I like that.
Yes, my job and lots of practice. No, I'm not.
Cool. Okay. So, I can waffle on for ages about all the stuff that over the years has kept me busy. First of all, I need to know who's who. So, just looking at Tui.
Hello. Hi. Nice to meet you.
And you. This is in no particular order. So, before I start talking about a lot of what I do, and Lucy and Emily, nice to meet you guys.
Hello.
It's helpful for me to know what sort of stuff you guys are interested in, because then I can kind of steer the bits that I've done, which are possibly the most relevant, if that makes sense. So, Emily, I'm going to start with you first. Just tell me a bit about yourself and what you're interested in and what got you together with Nick Hennigan, of all people on the planet.
Okay. I guess I kind of started at theatre school. And then I left theatre school, not really, I guess, missing it and sort of missing a connection, but I was, going down the route of academia, and then I started writing, and I feel like through my work in like business and writing, and now I've sort of found producing as something that sort of combines everything I've ever done and everything I'm quite interested in. So it's like my childhood coming back to me, wanting to be back in the theatre world. And then I'm interested to hear your story as well, because I've always loved the television industry and always been interested in going down that route as well. So that's about it.
Cool. And what sort of stuff are you drawn to? What sort of stuff are you hoping to do?
I really don't know yet, to be honest. And I think that was part of doing this course, in that I was hoping to provide clarification in my life a bit. But yeah, I really don't know.
That's fair enough. That's absolutely fair enough. Tui, what about you?
So I started off in the arts. I did a lot of music while I was younger, and then I got lured into university to study economics. Bad decision, but to try and find a proper job. Then I started working in the arts. I worked for the LSO. I ran the Barbican events department, and then got lured into corporate life, trying to earn a little bit of money. And then expanded, worked abroad, traveled a bit, worked in sports marketing, worked for a bank, all sorts of things, and then ended up setting up my own events company in 2001. And I've been very fortunate. I've had many years with some very loyal clients, running now leadership programs, trying to make corporates better humans, better leaders, making some good decisions there. I've recently been focusing a lot on sustainability. But my heart now is no longer with the corporate world, and my real passion is musical theatre. So I have been sitting in the stalls as often as I can, wishing that I was involved in producing something like that. So I've been very lucky. I've produced some amazing events. I get to work with some great crew, amazing talent, great speakers, a lot of budget, which is very nice to have. But I want to produce something that I really believe in, and something the outcome is something that resonates. And as I say, I've worked with too many corporates now who say that they will affect change, and they never do. They never do. So I definitely see my path. Ideally, trying to get a job within a theatre structure just to learn a bit more. So I this course has been fantastic in trying to see a path of how I could transition my experience, because I'm literally double the age of these two, you know, from corporate world, and as I say, you know, work with some great people back into the arts, and to see how I can be useful, you know, and see how I can help.
Makes sense. Lucy, what about you?
So I've done lots of, especially at uni, I did lots of like amateur musical theatre, kind of did producing, directing, stage managing, anything anything anyone needed, really. And now I'm working, I'm doing like administration and I guess kind of aspects of producing in a drama department in London, in a school. And I'm doing this course because I just wanted to find out a bit more about it, and it's solidified some things for me, I think, and I'm keen to produce shows that I've realized I'm quite particularly keen on new writing, and things that raise the profile of women in the industry, particularly in musical theatre, but also kind of retelling of stories through the female perspective. Yeah, that's that sort of thing.
Okay, well, that's great. I mean, Nick's probably been through this type of thing with you. There's no right or wrong way into this business. There's literally any way into this business. Let me tell you a bit about my route through into where I ended up, and kind of how I ended up doing what I'm doing, which is kind of a story of very similar in many ways, where we all spend quite a lot of our time wanting to be doing something slightly different to what we're doing. And that kind of leads you down different pathways, I think. So Nick's right. I started off as an actor, but prior to that, I went to art college, because when I was at school, I was reasonably good at sketching, and I'm not being modest, I was reasonably good. And kind of I was one of those kids that was just very into anything that was around at the time, and didn't have any plan as to where I was going to go and what I was going to do at all. So I drifted into art college, and then nearly got expelled, which I was quite proud of, because you've got to go some to get expelled from art college. But that was because I went on an art foundation course, and actually found myself skiving off a lot to go and do youth theatre. I grew up near Liverpool and went up to the Southport Youth Theatre up there, and spent basically most of my time skiving off. And the tutors weren't very happy, because they thought I'd wasted somebody's place. And I said, look, this course is to... Oh, sorry, I'm getting dogs coming in. I said, look, you know, this course is about finding out what you want to do, and I've just found out I don't want to do art. So, you know, mission accomplished. So from there, I went to drama college, very much supported by the lady who ran the youth theatre. And I did the classic. I went to the Welsh College of Music and Drama before it was Royal, and then, you know, just had a great old time doing that. And whilst we were there, it was back in the days when you still had to get your equity card, and you still had to kind of get in that catch-22 of getting into the closed shop, and you couldn't become an equity member unless you'd acted, and you couldn't act unless you had an equity card. And it was this weird system, and you had to kind of gain contracts to do that. So myself and a friend basically formed a kids theatre company and went around all the play schemes and did alternative comedy for kids. And going back a very long time now, this is in the 80s. And that really was our first taste of producing. And it was us in a transit van with a set lobbed in the back. And we just got as many gigs as we could get, and we went round and did them. And for all our naivety, I think it kind of gave us the bug to realize that we didn't want to wait for anybody else to give us the job. If we wanted to do something, we would try to do it. So that became kind of our work in practice, really. So we ran our own little theatre companies there, doing shows around the play schemes. We then came out of college and carried on doing that. And that graduated from doing kids shows around the play schemes to doing... We did a show called Not About Heroes, which is a two-hander. It's about Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen when they met in a mental institution during the First World War. It's a very poignant play. And we were just doing it around a couple of small-scale community venues. And then, for some reason, John Smith, who is his real name, was... Yes, hello. So there's a large dog here. You can't quite see him, but he's yawning now. Everyone's a critic. He phoned the Imperial War Museum, and we discovered that they have a theatre inside the museum in Vauxhall. So we did a few performances of this show there, which was amazing because you came out of the theatre into this huge hall. I don't know if you've ever been there. There's this massive cavernous area which is basically filled with the weapons of war. And it's one of these happy accidents where you realise, oh wow, this stuff becomes very powerful. Anyway, the irony of all that was that we were both doing these theatre things whilst we were busy wanting to do other stuff. John had decided he wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a jobbing actor and was trying to get jobs and started to get jobs. And we were just kind of meandering our way through. But what was always present was this idea of let's do this, let's do this, let's do our own stuff. And John then went from wanting to be a journalist to wanting to be a writer. And so he started writing stuff, and this is kind of the golden rule, which I'll probably keep coming back to, is if you want to do producing, or if you want to do writing, if you want to do acting, do it. There is more around to enable us to do what we want to do these days than there ever used to be. Doing a one-person show in a room next to a church or above a pub is as valid as doing a fuller show, because it's all part of the process and it's all part of the experience of learning, the craft of producing, because it really is a craft. Johnny, just to give you an idea of where he ended up with this idea of writing, and he just started writing ideas and writing scripts. If you're football fans, he wrote a movie called Mike Bassett, England Manager. He also wrote, and if you've seen the animated movie Romeo and Juliet, he wrote that, the original version of that, and sold it to Elton John's company. And he's constantly writing movies and television movies, and that's the way he went. The way I went as an actor was jobbing actor. I was getting jobs in rep, writing ideas down, looking at other shows that we could do. I then became a presenter on a kids' TV show called Playdays, which was it took over from a show called Play School, which is very old school, and preceded Teletubbies. And as a presenter on that, I met another guy called Ian Loughlin, and he and I got on very, very well indeed, despite the fact, ironically, the producers thought that we wouldn't and tried to keep us apart for 2 years. And we were the guys who then started saying, right, I've got an idea. Let's do a sell-through video. And we had this idea of doing a songs video for kids. We had no idea how to produce it, but we had a lot of experience of it. I was, by that time, starting to direct TV. I'll tell you a bit how that happened in a minute. And we just thought, well, we know how to do it. We know how to write it. We know how to direct it. Let's put it together. We just needed somebody to finance it. And we literally went through, this is pre-Google, believe it or not, we went through the Yellow Pages, which was basically a telephone directory. And we found companies that sold kids' videos. And I just phoned them all up and said, we've got this idea. This is who we are. We're very, very famous, important people. We work on the BBC. And eventually we found somebody, we got an address that looked like it was in a block of flats. And we found this company called Abbey Home Entertainment who made children's videos. And so they commissioned this video from us. All it was a few presenters on stage with some kids singing nursery rhymes. And we ended up making 7 of these videos and did them in different places. And it was just this, it was the thing that we kept wanting to do ideas and wanting to take control of our own lives and not wait for other people to do it for us, that eventually led to certain opportunities. It's very difficult to be very precise about what you want to do, but some people are very single-minded and they say, I want to make movies and I want to make them in this genre, and that's what they do. And I always say to people these days, if you've got a clear idea of what you want to do, try and make sure that everything you do is a step towards that. Even if it's, you want to make blockbuster movies, but you start off doing a show that's got a similar feel to it, or, just in a church hall somewhere, always try and work towards what you want to do. If you're not sure what you want to do, take anything that comes along, or just if you have an idea for something that you like, do it. And it doesn't matter if it's small scale. It doesn't matter if it's a one performance thing. It doesn't matter if nobody gets paid. What matters is that you do it. And there's all the cliches of the Nike advert, just do it, and all that kind of nonsense. But that's kind of the best advice I can give anybody, is if you've got an idea and you want to do it, find a way of doing it, and find a way of doing it for next to nothing. Just keep doing things. I'll give you another example. While we were doing those kids tours, we came up with an idea. We were based in South London at the time, in Croydon. And we were very close to Crystal Palace, and Crystal Palace famously burnt down. And we realized that there were a lot of people around us with our neighbors who were very nostalgic for the period of time between the wars. So in other words, they were born in the late sort of 19 teens, as it were. Oh, got somebody else joining us. I wasn't the latest one. I'm really pleased with that.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, Josh. This is Will.
Hi, Josh.
Hello. Sorry, everyone. I'm here. Thank you for your email, reminding me.
Yeah, come on, Josh. You know, it took you so long. You know, hate me, mate.
Honestly, I've been having dinner with my family, and we've started watching Hercules.
Well, I can't blame
But yeah, thank you for the reminder.
And
I'm sorry to interrupt.
hopefully you can catch up, Josh. I'm just talking about various projects that we did, just for the sake of doing stuff, really. And we were based in Croydon. We were realizing in our neighbors and stuff, there was a lot of nostalgia for the time in that area between the two wars. So we went round and we went to a lot of old people's homes, and we went to a lot of places where we just talked to people about what their memories were of the local area at that time. And inevitably things started cropping up that were common to everybody who lived in that area at the time. You know, the name of the cinema that everybody went to the night that the Crystal Palace burnt down. There was all these kind of common events that came up. All these memories of the same songs came up. And so we put that together. We kind of condensed all the memories into 4 characters. It was done by 4 women. And the show became their stories, which were basically an amalgamation of everybody's memories of what happened. It's very simple. We basically took it round old people's homes. We just had a ghetto blaster with a cassette with the songs on, and told these stories. And it had the most phenomenal response, you know, because, you know, you'd mention the name of a nightclub that people used to go to, or a cafe that people used to go to, everybody would recognize it. And you got these people kind of opening up after all this time, because they were being taken right back to their early years. And again, that costs next to nothing to put together other than time. To get it together, to get the people involved. We managed to get a lot of the old people's homes to pay a fee for the show, very small fee, but it was enough to cover the costs, to be able to hire the actors to do it. So that's just another example of just finding an idea and finding a way to do it. We didn't need to make a splash with it. We just needed to do it. And for us, that was a really useful experience. I think what all of that taught us was that we should, is that you can actually make things happen. And by making things happen, it gives you a little bit, you don't turn into a superhero, but you suddenly think, you know what, we can actually put an idea and take it through to completion. And that led to us starting to have ideas for TV. We were making these videos, and we started putting ideas in for TV shows. Mostly ideas were rubbish, but we started putting the ideas in because we were just learning about the process of pitching and what people needed to hear. The industry was very different in those days. And that's how Tweenies happened. So by this time, we were both working as actors. I'd been trained up to direct. The program that we both presented, the management of that program said to me one day, would you like to learn to direct? And I said, absolutely. And so they trained me up to direct the TV side of it, which was multi-camera studio and location and single camera and all that, which was a brilliant opportunity for me. It was effectively getting a BBC training, and being paid. I was kind of paid a half salary to do it. And so by that time, I'd been directing for years. I then managed to get a foot in the door on some of the soaps. I started directing Coronation Street and Emmerdale. And Ian and I were still coming up with ideas. We still wanted to do our own stuff. We found out the BBC wanted a program to follow on from Teletubbies, and they'd invited 7 companies to pitch for it. We weren't invited. We knew a lot of people, but our company wasn't very well known. But a friend of ours who had been invited to pitch for it had decided they weren't going to do it. So we phoned the BBC and asked if we could send in a pitch, and they said yes. Turned out they had about 75 pitches in the end. And over a process of a year, we sent in our original idea for Tweenies, and then over the process of a year, we had meetings, then more meetings, then more meetings. And then they called us into a budget meeting, supposedly. The commission was for 130 programs, so it's a big commission, and we didn't think we had a chance of getting it. We just thought, well, why, if we can get shortlisted, we've achieved something, you know. They took us into the meeting. They said, "Where's your company registered?" And we were registered in Banbury, which is where Ian lived, which is out of London. The BBC had an out of London content quota to meet. And they said, "Okay, can you all leave the room, please?" So we all had to go out of the room and kind of hang around in this corridor. And then about 25 minutes later, they invited us all back in and they sat us down, and they said, there were 4 of us who ran the company then. And they said, "Well, look, we'd like to commission the show from you." And we're going, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And they said, "But it won't be 130 programs." And I think I remember saying, "Well, obviously that's a lot to commit to straight away," you know, and started some more waffle. And they said, "No, we need 260. So this massive kind of thing landed in our lap. Well, I suppose it didn't land in our lap. There's quite a lot of work went into it. And that was kind of how that show came about, in terms of, you know, it just suddenly, you know, there's a lot of work that took us to that point. But I think what I'm trying to say through all this waffle is you can trace a direct route from doing those kids shows around play schemes in Cardiff and the Valleys through to Not About Heroes and the Young Between the Wars, which is what that show was called, that went around the young people's homes, to us doing the Fun Song Factory videos, which are these songs videos for kids, through to eventually the Tweenies commission happening. And if we hadn't started that process early on, we just wouldn't, it gave us the staging posts to get to where we wanted to get to, I suppose is the way of putting it. And it wasn't a goal at the beginning other than sheer obstinance that we didn't want to wait for anybody. When I was an actor, I hated the idea that I had to wait for an agent to get me an acting gig, when I thought, well, I can put a play on a small circuit and I can pay myself a salary from that. And, you know, if an acting job comes through the agent, happy days. So that's kind of a very long-winded way, perhaps, of saying all that. Once we got Tweenies going, and thankfully it worked, then that opened the door to other commissions. You go through this weird phase. You go through this phase where we could have gone in and given a broadcaster a digestive biscuit and said, "That's our next series," and they'd have taken it, because you're riding on this wave of nonsense, really, that these guys have just done this big show. We'll take whatever their next idea is. And that gradually peters out. But we ran that company for the best part of 15 years or so, making shows for ITV and Disney and Nickelodeon. We made loads of different shows, animation, live action, lots of different things. And the irony of it is that I started directing on the soap circuit, which is something I really wanted to do then, because I wanted to get, you know, into that kind of drama circuit. And then I found myself 15 years later trying to get back onto the soap circuit. And to be honest, having all of that kids' TV behind us, despite the fact that the shows we've done were really successful in that world, became a bit of a poison chalice, although I did manage to get back in. So now I direct on the soap circuit very regularly, but we've also kept a live show strand going. So over with Tweenies, we did 7 arena tours. We then went on and I did 7 arena tours for CBeebies, the channel. And God, we were doing all the others. We were doing Bob the Builder. We did Thomas the Tank Engine. We built life-size, huge train set with Thomas the Tank Engine. We did Bratz. I then did Doctor Who. So I did loads of arena shows. And so now we're actually trying to get a new company going, Wish Arenas, where we've got 3 shows. I'll tell you this now, but then I'll have to kill you. So we've just got the rights to do Polar Express as an arena show. We've also just signed a deal to do Transformers. And then the next one that's queuing up behind that is a show based on Jumanji, which interestingly was written by the same guy who wrote Polar Express, believe it or not, which is kind of why we've got it. They're big things. They're completely different. Now we're looking at trying to raise 10 million quid to do a show. It's a completely different kettle of fish, and I'm very nervous about it because it's very new to me. But you kind of start with the idea, I guess, and think, oh, that'd be good, and then you deal with the practicalities when you get into it. And Tui, you've done big events, you know, you'll know a lot of the stuff that's involved in that type of thing. Yeah,
not to the tune of 10 million though.
Say again?
I haven't had 10 million.
Oh, God, I wish. Hopefully we'll get there. We've had a couple of people say to us, "Oh yeah, you'll easily raise that for this." It's like, okay, that's easy for you to say sitting there, but we've got to do it now. So we're just going through the process of getting investment ready, whatever that means. But that's a kind of, again, that's a kind of a very potted way of putting it all together, I suppose. And for me, it went down the route of ending up doing a lot of kids theatre and kids TV and community theatre, and then it's ended up where we are now. But I think the same principle applies whichever direction you want to go in, because it's about creating stuff that's in the genre you want to work in, even at a very small scale level, because it counts, it matters, and it also gives you a CV. You know, suddenly you're getting, well, we've just done this show. Here's the production photos. Here's a couple of things that people said about it, and now we've done this show. Now we've done that show. It creates a momentum of its own, you know, and you suddenly you build a body of work, you know. And a lot, I give you a little apocryphal story. Well, it's not apocryphal, it's a story that happened with us, a friend of ours. He was an actor. He was struggling a bit to get a lot of work. When we put Not About Heroes together, we wanted him to play Siegfried Sassoon. He was perfect for it. And he kept saying no. He said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And then we said, why? It's, you know, we're getting these really nice venues together. And he said this really interesting thing. He said, because we've done it ourselves, it doesn't count. I said, of course it counts. Of course, it's genuine work. But some people have that feeling that if you've done it yourself, it's not as important as if somebody else has given you a job to do it. That's nonsense. If you've done it yourself, I think it counts even more, because you're not working within a safe framework of, oh, somebody else is taking responsibility for that, somebody else is taking responsibility for that. You're owning it, and the experience is invaluable, you know. So I highly recommend it. Joshua, what sort of stuff do you want to do?
I want to produce contemporary circus. So I have a background in circus arts as a juggler and dance trapeze artist.
So who have you worked with?
I worked with on cruises, with AIDA Cruise Lines. I worked with Last Theatre,
Yeah.
for an R&D of Mrs. Lovewright, and then a small circus company in Newcastle called Cirque Motif. We did a circus theatre show about touch and vulnerability. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh, yeah.
So
yes.
yeah.
I remember the who's a circus school in Islington? Is it Islington? There's a circus school.
Old Street.
Okay, we were going to do a circus version of, was it Beauty and the Beast or Sleeping Beauty? I can't quite remember now. A long time ago. I think it's fascinating. I think it's a great way of doing stuff. Is it Birmingham Rep this year themed their I think it was Goldilocks, and they themed it with circus as well. It's
cool. Yeah, it's popping up everywhere. I did the degree at the Circus Old Street, so I know it very well.
Okay, so is the next step for you, do you think, putting the whole show together or doing a smaller scale thing? What do you think is the first step?
I think my next step is finding an assistant producing role in the circus sector. I would love to produce small scale circus theatre shows. Yeah. But I think the next step, to be honest, I think I'm not really sure. I would love to say I would produce for Cirque du Soleil, but I don't know French, and I don't know if I can learn it that quickly. But hey, yeah.
Hey, listen, you know,
yeah.
Never say you can't do something. That's not meant to be one of those kind of crass photos against a picture of a sunrise. Just allow yourself the possibility that could happen. My daughter's a graphic designer, and she came out of Reading University, and I gave the dad chat saying, okay, so don't turn any opportunity down and make sure that you get experience and build your CV. And she went, no, I want to work for Papier, which is this company who do quite posh notebooks and diaries and things. 6 months later, she got a job at Papier that had 1,000 applicants for it, because she really wanted to do it. And when she got the interview, she made a whole bunch of stuff with packaging on it to show what she could do, and she just went for it. And I think, you know, you could always surprise yourself by by getting that job that feels out of reach, I think sometimes. So never worry about what's the worst thing that can happen. Somebody says no, big deal, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say really about that kind of pathway for me. I don't know if that's given you any questions or if there's any specific stuff you want to ask about. Listen, I'm an open book. Whatever you need to know, just fire questions at me. Yeah.
I'd be really interested to know about just the entry into sort of TV land, because I've got quite a few friends who are either location managers or, you know, worked in the industry for years, more on the creative side. And from where I sit now, you know, I'm starting to think about how I could possibly get some experience within a theatre framework. So I'm applying for internships, which is not making my husband very happy. And I'm suddenly he's down to being the single earner in this household with our children. But if one was to try and get experience within the TV world, is it literally you just got to keep out, you know, banging on the doors and trying to be a runner, trying to get on location, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, I think sometimes it's good either as an internship, or another way in is to just say, look, you're really interested in this type of role or that type of role or that type of role, and asking if you can come in and shadow somebody for a day, you know. And then you get to know you know, a contact in a company, and look at a lot of the indie companies who tend to be a little more open for this type of thing than the more institutionalized channels.
Because actually a lot of my production guys that I work with regularly on our events, that's what they actually do, is they want to make films, you know, but they come work for me because I pay them better.
Yeah. And you know, it's always that balance, isn't it, of getting the work that pays you and the work you want to do. But I think, I mean, I'm just trying to think. Oh no, I've got two dogs coming in. Why am I suddenly so popular? I think you know, for instance, I'm back on Hollyoaks for My Sins, filming in March. I'm prepping at the minute. They've already said to me, we've got a new director coming in, possibly, do you mind if they shadow you for a couple of days? And I've said no, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things whereby, you're right, it's one of those things where it's very little pressure on them to give you that opportunity. It's very easy for them to give you that opportunity. Just bear with me a second, hold on. I'm just going to get the dogs out, bear with me a sec. Right, go on, OT.
That's the first time I've seen any of his children.
Right, I've got no idea who that is. I don't know. Yeah, sorry about the dogs at this time of night like to go out, so they were mithering me to go out. Apart from Otis, there's nobody else in the house. Where was I? Oh yeah, it's easy for them to give that opportunity, and it's easier than giving full work. It's easier than giving an internship. It's literally just, okay, yeah, you can come and sit on set for a bit and just see how it happens and just soak it up a little bit, you know. But it's an in, you know, it's that old thing of you get to know people and you know about an opportunity, depending on where you're all based, see if there's something local that you can maybe slot into. And yeah, things come up that way, you know. The interesting thing these days as well, depending on what you want to do in a TV sense, is we've never had more equipment in our hands than we have these days to do stuff like that. You know, professionally, people do films on their phones. You know, it's kind of a bit gimmicky, but people do that. There's nothing stopping anybody just saying, well, you know what, I've got some actor friends, let's film them doing some scenes or doing some monologues, or just find something that's a little 3-minute piece that you'd like to do. It's experience. Sometimes you surprise yourself and come up with something that you're not expecting to. But also you can build results. You learn so much by doing it, you know, and rather than waiting for somebody else to say, yes, come and do that for us, just do it. Just do something. And you'll find, you know, with directing especially, and it's a different skill to what some of you want to do, you learn about it in the edit suite. You realize why your shots do or don't go together, for instance. It's like Piccadilly Circus in this room now, isn't it? but you can't do that unless you've actually shot something. And it doesn't matter that it's on a phone. You know, you look at all the classes that are around these days for just doing a little course on how to shoot stuff. So that, you know, I know that's very specific to directing, but it is just do it. Just do what you can do. And, you know, if you're looking at, Lucy, if you're looking at pieces that are particularly around women, find a piece that you really like, or devise a piece with a couple of friends, and either stage it for an audience or film it, you know, film it in a way that you can then put it together and find a place to post it. You know, you're always going to get people who might say stupid stuff, or they might be critical, whatever, you know, they don't matter. What matters is that you have something that you've done, and you'll look at it and you'll think, oh my God, I learned this, this, and this, and I would do all of that differently. Great. You're better off than you were before you did it. And we kind of learned that by default, I think, because we were just trying to earn a bit of money, I think. And we're kind of flipping the finger to the drama college as well, that wouldn't let us go out and get our equity cards. So we did. Because they were, yes, well, usual kind of drama college rebellion, I suppose. And producing a show too, I mean, you know this anyway, I imagine, but producing an event is not that different to producing a show. The nuts and bolts of what you know, you need staging and lighting and sound and all that. You need all those same things. It's just the material that technical side of it is facilitating is different. So a lot of the skills do cross over, and a lot of it is, you know, what makes a really good piece of drama. It's much closer to your real life than you probably think it is. It doesn't have to be the most compelling piece of drama that's ever written. It just needs to be something. And don't do it for anybody else. Just do it for yourself. You know, there's nobody forcing you to put it in front of a massive audience. But if you come up with something you like, then you can put it in front of whoever you want. There's nothing to lose, basically, by just doing something. If that doesn't sound too glib. What other areas are interested to you in terms of things like budgeting or anything in that on the practical side of it? Because I suppose sometimes producing is one of those weird roles, isn't it? Say, yeah, I want to produce stuff, but producing, you get very creative producers who get very involved in the creative side of a project. You get others who stand completely back and just facilitate. And I guess it depends what type of producers or directors you want to be.
I think one of the things I struggle with is like coming up with the idea and then being like, that's the one that I'm going to put loads of effort into. And then the next day not being like, oh, that one was rubbish, I'll think of another one.
Yes.
It's
well,
like,
listen, every idea you have, even if it's the best idea you've ever had and you're really committed to it and you get really excited about it, there will come a point where you think, oh, Jesus, it's crap. Because just the slog of getting something through from the excitement of having the idea through to the excitement of seeing it completed, I'm not putting you off the job here, but the middle bit of that is tiring, you know, because it becomes so workaday. You've got so much to accomplish to do it. And part of it's a bit like when people say, oh, this book's rubbish. And it's a bit like, yeah, okay, the book isn't that great, but it's a book, you know. And the fact that that person is sitting down and written an entire book and come up with an entire story, they'll be much better off in terms of where they are artistically in their pathway than somebody who's just sitting back being critical of the book. And you're right, you know, if you try and create, it's a bit like saying, I'm going to be a painter, but my first painting has to be a masterpiece. It's like, no, just do a painting. You know, so if you're looking at producing circus themed performance stuff, put something together with some performance that you know that lasts 3 minutes, you know, and film it or busk it, or do you know what I mean? Just start the process of making stuff. because that's where you'll learn, and you don't need anybody else to give you permission to do that, because you've got all the skills yourself.
Yeah.
Never wait for anybody else to enable you.
How different would you say producing for television is to producing for theatre? Are they like very interlinked, or?
There's a lot that, if you there's a Venn diagram, there is a lot of crossover.
Mm.
You know, that you've got budgeting, you've got casting, you've got design, you've got concept, you've got all that sort of stuff in the middle. And obviously you need to know what you need for a TV production and what you need for a theatre production. So the line items in the budget are important to get right. And again, that's knowledge that you build up over a period of time, or you can talk to people and get templates for that. Obviously, the biggest difference is that with theatre, you're building up to an event, which is your opening night, and you're creating something that has to run from beginning to end seamlessly, where you're creating stuff where you can't edit what the audience are seeing. They're seeing the entire picture at all times, and it's up to them which bits they look at. So you get audiences who self-edit. With TV and film, it's the exact opposite. You're being very prescriptive about, I want you to look at this now, and now look at that, and now look at that. You know, that partly affects how you tell the story. From a producing perspective, the nuts and bolts for about even as much as 2/3, I would say, are very, very similar. And then the rest of it is about how the execution happens and the timelines and everything. And if you're not involved in the writing of it or in the performance of it or the directing of it, if you're not involved in that creative edge of it, the job of producing actually is very similar for both. It is about the budgeting. It is about making sure the staffing is correct. It's about making sure the scheduling is correct. It's making sure you've got the support in the team you have around. Yeah, it's they're very similar boxes to tick as you go through, I would say. The difference is, and this is so different these days, the difference would normally have been the platform on which you can show something. You know, with theatre, you can show it in a church hall. Everybody used to worship the broadcast because they were the only people who gave you a platform. Now there are multiple platforms that you can put things on yourself. I mean, again, there's no barriers to reaching your audience anymore with televisual stuff. There always used to be.
With the producers that you've worked with over the years, what would you say is the most valuable trait that they have shown, the best ones have produced, and what is the worst, the most annoying trait?
Oh, how long have you got? It's an interesting question, that, because there are kind of forward-facing producers who are very involved day to day on the studio floor, if you like, who are present with everything that's going on. There are other producers who stand back and just try and make sure that everything is dotted. I think the best producers, I think, are aware of how everybody else's job works and what they're doing, and are therefore aware of when they might be asking too much of somebody or when they might be too generous with something. I think that can be quite hard. You get some producers who just keep cutting back and pushing people to do more and more and more. And I think the ones who take the team for granted, I think, are the worst producers. I think the best producers are the ones who at least try and have an understanding of everybody's role within it and show some kind of appreciation. You'll get no thanks for it. You know, we used to joke about it and say the job of producing means you spend 2 years trying to get a production off the ground. And when you do, and you employ all these people, all they do is stand around you in a circle and kick you in the balls the whole time because, you know, everybody finds something to complain about. And then you get to the end product and everybody's delighted. You know, it can be a thankless task, said he, not selling it very well. But it's about consideration and a clarity of facilitating the project. So I'm doing a show for the Manchester International Festival this year, which is happening at a new venue in Manchester called The Factory, which has been built on top of the old Granada Studios. This is an adaptation of an Oliver Jeffers book. I don't know if you know Oliver Jeffers, who's the picture book author. Brilliant guy, far too cool for his own good. Called Lost and Found, about a penguin who knocks on the door of a boy, and the boy helps him get back to the South Pole. And then when he leaves him there, they both realize they miss each other, so they get back together. That's kind of the story in a nutshell. Don't know why we're spending so much money on it. They are very, very aware of the creative process, and they put that at the top of their priorities. They want to facilitate the creative process as best they can. Other producers who are very much at the commercial end of it, I do a lot of commercial pantos and stuff like that as well, where it's like, there's a set, you've got a week to rehearse it, you've got 4 days to take it, just get it on. And that's a completely different thing, because it's pretty much every request you put in for a prop or something like that gets knocked back with a no, because they just want to get the show on. That's good. Why do we do it? Because you can still have some fun doing it, but it's a completely different experience. And the choice is yours as to what type of producer you want to be, you know. Hopefully the more caring type. But, you know, some of it can be stressful. I mean, you must get the same in events, don't you, too? You must get people who mount events, and it's just a stress fest.
Yeah,
and
completely.
People who, you know, just more laid back about it.
And as you say, you know, my projects are usually, I get recruited at least a year in advance to start the process of finding the venues and negotiating all the contracts. And my job is, you know, if it goes seamlessly, in a way, I become even more invisible, because they're like, it just happens. I mean, people say things like, how long did this take? Like, a couple of weeks? I'm like, no. Every slide you see, I wrote, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get that, and I mean, I often say that about directing, especially on the kind of day-to-day TV shows. If anybody notices the directing, you're not doing your job, because they're not meant to be noticing the directing. They're meant to be getting engaged with the story, and if you do it well, the way you put it together will engage them in the story, and only the story. You don't want people to be bouncing out of it.
Yeah, I mean, my job is to make the people on stage look as brilliant as they can be, to give their best performance.
Yeah.
You know, try as we will, but you know, and to manage my crew. And the crew are the best fed. They get the nicest rooms. They get the free upgrades.
Yeah.
It's not the corporates.
Happy crew is a happy show, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Never have a hangry crew.
No, not at all. And that, you see, I mean, that's your experience there has gained that knowledge, in terms of, you know, that when you're putting a show together, you don't want to work the crew too hard, because the crew are literally the thing that holds the show together. As much as the actors will think it's them, I bless them, it's not. You know, we rub their shoulders and put them in a place where they can shine. But, you know, a good, and you must have all come across this, a good actor respects the jobs of the crew around them. And I think a good producer, comes back to what I was saying about, you know, just having that appreciation of what everybody does. A good producer understands what he's asking people to do. And I think that's maybe the crucial part of it. I know there's a guy on Emmerdale, for example, called Nadia Mabadi, who's their head of production. And he, I mean, it's a bit of a joke, actually. Everyone takes a mickey out of it, but he's been through and pretty much done everybody's job, even directing, and I think he even acted for a bit. But actually what that's given him is an understanding of what everybody has to do. So he knows what he's asking of people. And that really helps, I think. Yeah. And Josh, if you've done cruises, you've been blessed with very, very good tech. They always have up-to-date equipment, don't they?
Yeah, they had a whole laser show one night.
Yeah, no, I know. The amount of times I've been, I've do a few shows with a lady called Raki Plus, who directed a show called American Idiot. I don't know if everyone saw it, which was the Green Day show, kind of went round. It's very much in the style of the Bat Out of Hell style shows, that kind of those kind of rock jukebox shows. I kept telling me about the quality of the screens they were using, with the best quality, like 1.8 mil pitch, which means how dense the screens are and how good the quality is, the quality of the lasers, the quality of the technical equipment that they were building for each show. Yeah, the cruises finance what they do very, very. They're like Disney, you know.
Yeah, they are. They have the budgets for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not jealous at all.
No. Not one bit.
Yeah. No, I'm very happy at the back end of Wolverhampton trying to put a pantomime for £2.50. Yeah.
How do you manage to keep energy so alive on when you're directing soap operas? I mean, it must be, when you hear interviews with actors who compare, filming a movie to the pressure of being able to perform constantly and the amount of lines they have to learn, and how there's so less takes that they can do and opportunities. How do you manage that?
It's funny because it's a kind of, what soaps can never be is self-indulgent, in the sense of, you can't do too much navel gazing in it. You kind of got to crack on with it. And soaps are quite strange not strange, but they're a bit like panto, in the sense that panto has a level of performance which, unless you get to it, the whole thing feels really naff. But when you suddenly get to that level of performance, it just gels. It makes sense, and soap's the same. Soap has an element of unreality that we all buy into. We all accept it when we watch a soap. It's caricatured quite often. The comedy is very on the nose. A lot of the emotional scenes are very on the nose. Tears get turned on and off very quickly, and you have to kind of embrace that wholeheartedly and run with it, because that's what makes it work. And actually, that's what makes it fun as well. Because a lot of the time when we're doing soaps, you'll read a scene and you'll think, are you serious? Can we possibly do this? But then you kind of embrace it and you go into it and it's fine. But it is a hell of a turnover. I mean, I on EastEnders, there's been times when you've got a scene to shoot in studio and you've got 20 minutes to shoot the scene. And, you've got 3 cameras, so it's multicam. And you literally get in, you say, right, you walk in, you sit down on that line, and then can you move on that line, and can we try and find something for the end, because it's end of part or whatever it is on the commercial soaps. And the actors are the sort of actors who can parachute into something and just deliver it and go home. It's a completely unique thing, but it works. I remember doing a show, and I'm not saying this as a name drop because it's a bit of a joke, but I did a show with David Hasselhoff. He played Captain Hook, and he walked into the room wearing a T-shirt that said "Don't hassle the Hoff," handing out masks of himself, completely on brand. And he came in and he did his thing, and he was David Hasselhoff through and through. And then he walked out the room, at which point I'm convinced he forgot everybody who was in the room and everything that had happened. But he was on brand, and he did it well, and he went off. It's that type of thing almost. It's just a different way of delivering stuff, and it is a laugh. It is fun, as bizarre as it is.
I was wondering, what's the process of pitching a TV show? How does it go from an idea into sort of something that's presented to a studio?
Okay, so my main experience is pitching kid shows, obviously, but I have pitched other stuff as well, or been involved in pitches. There's a few kind of cliches about pitching, but actually they're very, very true. Have you ever heard of the elevator pitch? So the elevator, it's like, if you can't pitch your show in the time it takes an elevator to go up 3 floors, the idea isn't right. So there is so much truth in that statement. Because you literally have that amount of time to come up with a slam dunk sentence that makes people take notice. The other thing that I've heard, pardon my French, is you need 5 fuck off facts on the first page. In other words, you need to be able to say, it's that, it's that, it's that, and it's that, and it's that. That's 5, isn't it? To kind of hammer home. Imagine it like you're hammering in a nail. It sells the show. You can write a 4-page character analysis, nobody will read it. And you kind of have to put yourself in the position of a viewer. If you see a trailer for something, if they don't give you a twist in the first couple of 10 seconds, you're liable to switch off. And broadcasters are like that, but even worse, So you've got to find that way of grabbing them. I'm trying to think of some of the ones we did. I mean, the Tweenies pitch was quite a tricky one, because the BBC sent out a 70-page brief of what they wanted the shows to cover. and it was songs and stories and play and all these things. I went to a great deal of it, analysis about it. And the actual pitch for Tweenies was, it's 5 kids in a room, and they're doing everything that kids do, and that's kind of the pitch. And there was another Tweenie called Sid who never made it through to TV stardom, but that was the actual pitch for it. And then later on in life, we saw, do you remember The Secret Life of 5-year-olds, where they did that documentary of kids in play? That's Tweenies. That is real life Tweenies. That's exactly what it was kids in a play group, talking to each other, arguing with each other, falling out, having fun, and all of that. It was Tweenies done as a documentary. And that was the pitch. There was a show we did for ITV called Jim Jam and Sonny. And the idea is that it was these 2 kids and all of their toys were alive to them, and it's what they did. And the pitch was, Toy Story got it wrong, because for a kid, the toys come to life when you go into the room, not when you go out of the room. And I always felt that with Toy Story. I said, where's the fun in a toy that comes to life when you're not in the room with it? It's a very adult perspective on toys. You find that with a lot of Pixar style movies, they're actually taking a very adult take on things, not necessarily a kid's take on things. And I always thought Toy Story got it the wrong way around for a kid. I think for an adult, they kind of got it the right way around. So it's really important that you get that. We've got one at the moment, which is a sitcom, kids sitcom, which the BBC want to commission. We're just doing more development on it. And it's about a kid who's got a magic sticker book, and she can stick stickers onto real life and change things. So she could stick a crown on you and become a king, or she can stick a sun into the sky and it changes the weather. But then it's all circumstances of that. So when she sticks a sun in the sky, it never stops shining. So, nobody can go to sleep at night. It's that kind of Bewitched, Sabrina type unforeseen circumstances of magic. But the premise is really simple. You can stick a sticker onto real life. And that, as an elevator pitch, has got people interested every single time. So you need to really work out what the hook of the idea is. And usually you'll find wherever a successful program is, that somewhere behind it, there is a good elevator pitch. Gets people attention. But the thing to remember though about that, and I've gone around it a little bit. I'll come into a bit more detail about what you need to include. The good thing about having to really focus on what the idea essentially is it makes you really interrogate the idea. And that way, when you have a conversation with something about it, there's very few questions they can ask you that you probably haven't thought of. So that's really useful. What do you need? You need a premise. So that's a paragraph about what the show is, where it's set, and what the hook is. Think of it as the blurb on the back of a book. You then need a bit about the key characters, what drives them, and what their goal is, what are they trying to achieve. A bit about the setting, and then maybe a slightly extended storyline. So if you imagine the back of the book blurb is the stuff that tells you who the characters are, what the story is, and poses the question, if you like, as to which way the story is going to go in the series. I'm pretty sure with some Googling, you could find some examples of pitch documents that people have used in the past. You then also have a thing that they call the show Bible, and that's where you go into much more detail. So rather than just having a paragraph on each character, maybe a page on the storyline, which I would call the pitch deck. So this is the show, elevator pitch. Oh, that sounds interesting. Tell me a bit more. Okay, well, this is it. Then you go into the back of the book blurb about what the premise of the series is. You might name your 2 or 3 lead characters and be very clear about who the lead is. And then you'll go into more detail about the characters and the storyline. See what I mean? It's kind of, it opens up like an inverted pyramid. You've got your elevator pitch, you've got your back of the book blurb, and then you've got more detail on top of that. And really try and find out, well, what are the things that are really challenging about the show, or what are the hooks about the show? There's another concept of ours, which I think we're going to write up as a book rather than a show. And it's How Do You Solve a Murder? Simple, Ask the Victim. And it's about a kid who can travel between the ghost world and the real world because he has a fight with death and wins. And it's like, but the price that he has to pay is that he can travel between the two worlds. But what he does with that is he then uses it as a way of bringing people to task when they've murdered people. So it's kind of in the Buffy zone really of stuff. But again, it's a nice tag. How do you solve a murder? Simple, ask the victim. You know, it poses a question while solving a question. You know, it's that kind of, it's a nice little tease into something. So yeah, that's kind of how we'd put it together. And sometimes it can be exhausting because you can feel an idea crumbling when you're trying to really interrogate it, and that's the hard bit, because you need to find a way of putting it back together again so that it makes sense. But trust the process, because if you can make it work, then you've got a much stronger idea. Yeah. Trying to think what else might be useful for you guys to take on.
Can I just ask about CVs and things like that? So, you know, I have a sort of extended CV, which is, you know, dull corporate stuff, but it, you know, goes into my whole sort of back catalogue, as it were. And then I've got like a condensed. If you were receiving an email from me, would you just want like a quick, as you say, elevator pitch of this is why I should come and help you on your project, or what would you expect?
Initial approach, I would say it's more of doing a biog than a CV.
Yeah.
So it's like a paragraph. This is who I am. This is what I'm interested in. This is 2 or 3 things that I've done, and then maybe a couple of visuals. You know.
Yeah.
Have you got websites?
I do, but it's really corporate.
Yeah,
but I'm thinking of just adapting that to make it more visual and less content related.
Yeah. I mean, a sweeping generalization here, but I think most people in our business are visual people.
Yeah.
And I think a short biog with some, you know, headlines about this, and this, a gallery of photos that people can scroll through. You know, we realized very quickly after, when we started getting into interviewing people, which obviously once we got to Eunice became a much more frequent occurrence. I never looked at anybody's A levels. It didn't make any difference to me. I might have looked at where they went to college to see if it was, you know, I don't know, Maureen Green's dance academy, or if it was RADA. You know, you just look and see what's going on. But the most important thing, for me anyway, when I've looked at people's CVs, is what do they do? You know, I'd far rather read something that says recently produced this, or recently put on a show here, or recently spent 3 months doing this. Do you know what I mean? It's what people do off their own bat which makes them interesting, not what exams they did or what they did at school. Or do you know what I mean? It's that kind of, what are they somebody who's got a bit of drive and individuality to them, or are they somebody that actually just goes along with fitting into the various holes that people might put them in? And I think it's more interesting to find people who do things, which might sound a bit cliched and glib again maybe, but it's also, you know, we say this thing about just do stuff. If you're going to be interviewed by somebody and they say, so what have you been up to recently? And you say, oh, nothing much. I'm just, you know, I've not really found anything that's come along yet. You know, the only response to that is okay, you know. But if they're saying, so what have you done recently? And you're saying, well, actually, you know, Josh, I've been looking at a series of sketches that use circus skills to do this, this, and this, and we've started filming them. You then have an interesting conversation on your hands. They can ask you why and what's your approach and what are you thinking of. Do you see what I mean? And suddenly you're having an entirely different conversation, because then you're talking more as equals, as people who both do stuff, rather than interviewee and interviewer. And it doesn't matter if something is just at the planning stage, it's something you're doing, it's something you're working on. And that completes the story, actually, of that friend of mine I was telling you about, who didn't want to do Not About Heroes because it wasn't a proper job. The irony was, when he was doing Not About Heroes, he then, which is the Secret to Soon play, he then went up for a job on a show called Irma Vep, which is a vampire-based show. It's a two-hander, I think. that was on in the West End at the time, and he got the job. And he said we spent the entire interview audition talking about Not About Heroes. And so it's the fact that he did that job that gave him something interesting to the director to talk about. You're just a more interesting person if you're doing stuff, I think.
Thanks.
I've bombarded you with loads of information. Apologies for that. You can sift through it when Nick sends you the recording. Yeah, and Emily, visuals in any, if you want to pitch for anything, I think there's nothing wrong with a good visual somewhere that just kind of sums up the mood. You know, if you put a certain type of image with any proposal that you think sums up the tone or the setting or the whatever, it's a cliche of a picture's worth 1,000 words, isn't it? It's a shorthand. And it just puts you in the zone of where the show is, I think. I'm just trying to see. I don't think I've got it here. I've got the original Tweenie sketches. I should have got them. What was interesting about them is that the actual characters themselves, for most of them, stayed very close to the original drawing. I don't think I've got them. Well, that's a shame. I should have thought. Sorry. Yeah, the characters by and large stayed very close to what the drawings were because it helped the broadcaster just imagine what we meant.
So how much did the broadcaster, I mean, in the case of the Tweenies or in any show, how much did they sort of take from your idea and then make you change it? Is that a lot of push and pull with them?
It does vary quite a lot, actually. Tweenies, they changed very little, actually, from what we pitched. Jim Jam and Sunny, for ITV, that went to. The original concept was the entire set was all built twice life size, so the actors became the height of real kids. So the kitchen counter was 6 foot off the ground. It's a great set to move in. It's fantastic. But the idea originally was the entire set was going to be white, and you'd only see things shown in relief from the way it would be lit. And the only things in color would be the characters and the key prop that story was about. And it was all about, we did a load of research with Nottingham University about how kids watch TV screens, and they spend a lot of time, like if they were, I don't know if you're on gallery view, I'm on gallery view here, but if a kid's watch a screen like this, if we cut from a close-up to gallery view, they would spend some time trying to find out who's speaking. It's a microsecond, but it's time when they're not engaged with what's going on. So it's all about how do we make it as easy as possible for them to find their way through what we're showing them, because we select the pictures for them, you see. So we've got to make sure we're not going from a close-up on somebody to a crowd shot with 15 people in it, because they can't keep up with it. And when they commissioned the show, I remember the commissioning editor, a guy called Stephen Andrew, shouting across this huge open plan office at ITV, saying, this is what we should be doing. We should be revolutionize. That's not a word, is it? But you know what I mean. Kids TV. And we think, yeah, great. It's fabulous. When we got into the show, he started to bottle it. He started to lose his nerve. And he started saying, can you just add a bit of color on that part of the set? Can you just add a bit of... And in the end, we ended up with this fairly awful kind of beige set. And he literally said this to me at one point. He said, I asked somebody in the law department what they thought. It's like, well, why were you asking them? You know, because you just happened to have a conversation with them. And because they said, oh, I think it should be more colorful. So all the research we've done, he just threw out the window just because one of their lawyers said he thought it should be more colorful. And that's when it gets frustrating. And sometimes you have a bit of a barney with them over stuff. It depends how good you are at fighting, whether you're diplomatic or not. And it varies broadcaster to broadcaster. Sometimes you'll find that they do complete 180s on their decisions for stuff. And you have to just go along with it. You've got no choice. When you look at TV shows, if TV is what you want to get into, which shows do you kind of think, I'd love to be working on that? Okay. Amy Matt, and everybody.
I think for me it would be a sort of 6-episode drama.
Yeah.
You know, with a really strong middle, you know, beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
I could never see myself working on soaps. You know, I couldn't. I don't think I've got that sort of stamina. That's why I went into events in the first place, is that I like creating something with a beginning, a middle, and an end of a project or whatever it was doing. So that would be my kind of genre, probably with some show tunes just, you know, interspersed for fun, you know.
Yeah.
Definitely not reality TV though.
No, I can't do reality TV. And soaps work for me because I dip in and out. I get in, I go, I do a block, and then I go. I couldn't work in the scripting department of a soap. It would do my head in. And it's like the running joke on Hollyoaks is you go there, every time I go there, somebody else has been taken hostage. It's like everybody's been taken hostage in this place. It's ridiculous. It's a soap, you know. What about you, Lucy? Is TV something you'd like to do?
I'd never really thought about it, to be honest. I was just thinking, I don't know. I've like, it's not something that's ever really like, I don't know. I think I love the liveness of theatre, and I think with TV, I think I'd I don't know. I guess it would just be very.
They are very different. They are very different form of satisfaction.
Mm.
I mean, I'm with you. I think the buzz of a live event that is a shared experience amongst, whether it's 20 people or whether it's 4,000 people, that's a real buzz that you just don't get it on TV.
No.
And for all that, and it's true, a lot of TV folk have a snobbery about the fact there's this kind of implicit thing that somehow TV is better, which I've never subscribed to, because it's not, you know, but they kind of see themselves as the better genre. And then, of course, ironically, you get people always desperate to go back into theatre once they've done a bunch of TV. TV is a completely different form of satisfaction. As an actor, I got virtually no satisfaction out of it other than, you know, enjoying the day when we did the filming. But you don't get any sense of an audience. You don't get any sense of the finished product because you've got so little control over that. You don't even know what it looks like because it's not like you're watching the monitors when you're doing it, you know. So you have to wait until the thing goes out before you've got the faintest idea what it looks like. When you're directing TV, it's different because you're always seeing what it looks like and you're conceiving that, which is why I wanted to go into directing, because I just enjoyed that process much more, and I love getting complex sequences storyboarded and then really matching the storyboarding, and you feel like you do feel much more that you're crafting something, and that's nice. But even then, you just don't get that buzz that you get from a live show. And I think that was something that we all missed during the pandemic. I think it's interesting. I've got a lot of friends who run arenas and things, obviously, with all the stuff I've done there. Music events, when people could come back, came back 100%. It was pretty much straight away. Everybody came back. And I think there was a real need, especially partly because the audiences tend to be younger, to get that vibe again of being in a room with a bunch of people of that scale. And it's a bit like when people go and see a football match, you know, that whole euphoria of being in a large mass of people enjoying something together. And TV will never give that to people. So it's very different indeed. When you've done the events too, have they been one-offs, or have they ever done more than? Are they generally building up to a one-off performance?
I've done lots of different things. I mean, you know, I started off doing lots of sort of, you know, anything from sort of receptions, the dreaded Christmas party, you know, client events, sales initiatives, whatever it be. But now, it's probably since having kids, I decided to really focus on longer term projects, bigger, longer term projects, just because I couldn't be in London all the time. I didn't have the energy for that either. So they are typically anything from 3 main days on the conference. Obviously, you've got the pre-conference in terms of rehearsals and get-ins, and because we build amazing sets, and we're flying everyone in from all around the world, and then various sort of fringe events. But it's mainly, it's a sort of a 3-day program, and part of that process, the most important part of my job is trying to get that engagement for a whole 3 days, because they get more tired, more hungover, more like children every day. So it's the part I enjoy the most about my job is actually producing what's actually on the set. I love all that visual, but also it's really just unpicking the agenda to see how to control the narrative, because these corporates, they're like, well, let's just do that and that and that. I'm like, no, it's 4 o'clock on the 3rd day. No one is listening. Let's get them out into the city, or let's get them up on their feet, or let's get them banging drum, whatever they're going to be doing. But I only get one shot. It's never filmed, and one of my big bugbears actually is that I think they're not accountable enough. And these, we do fly them from around the world, and I think they have a duty of care to their teams back in whatever region they work in, that they should, relay what they've learned and put them on the spot and say, this is what I've done for the last 3 days. I haven't just been getting pissed in Copenhagen. So that's my big bugbear. But we just get one shot, and then it's, we go through a whole lot of feedback of whether was it worth it, and say I'm lucky I'm in charge of a lot of money. And when times are tough and people aren't getting bonuses, and we're choosing to spend their budget on training them, you've got to make sure it's as impactful as possible. And I always say that my job, they always go, oh, you must be delighted. I'm like, I'll be delighted when I see you in 6 months and things have changed, things have moved on, your team are happier, you're more committed to sustainability, whatever it is. But yeah, I wish sometimes that I'd get a chance to do it again, and work with them again sort of 6 months later. And I think that would be, great to have another run of it. But
and then you can build something up, can't you?
I'm lucky I worked with the same client for one of my clients I've worked with for 18 years. So I do know them really well. And so it's the same people coming through, which is nice. And we try and make them better, just little things like getting them to be better presenters, because some of them are rubbish, even though they have really important jobs. And I'm sure they're very good at pitching to clients in a small conference room. They have no idea how to project in a venue in front of 150 of their peers. No idea. So I like that bit of my job as well.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. It's always a difficult thing about theatre, isn't it? It's because the real magic happens between the people in the room. And even if you videoed it, the video doesn't capture that magic.
No.
It doesn't capture that moment, which I guess is why we all do it. I think that's, it's a feeling you can't bottle. So you've got to be there to enjoy it.
Although I think some of the streamed performances have created that magic, with the power of good camera work and amazing performances. Like we were talking the other day about Prima Facie, the Jodie Comer that was filmed at the National, which was extraordinary. Watching it live. I'm watching it live in the cinema rather than being live in the theatre. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it, that idea that even though you're watching something on a screen, the knowledge that you're watching it live gives it an extra layer, an extra sort of bit of danger in a sense. Which I think is always the thing about live. It's like going to a gig. You go to a gig and it's the fact that you know that you're watching that version of that show for that one time. And you also get stories of, in shows when you do the classic rehearsed corpses and things like that, where people actually get pissed off when they went to see a show and thought something went wrong on the night, and weren't they privileged that they saw it that night because everybody laughed, and then they go and see it again 6 months later and realize, oh, that happens every night. Okay, but hey, that's part of the danger and the joy of it. I don't think I'd ever give up wanting to do live stuff. And it's interesting I've had arguments with TV people talk about, broadcasters, and if they ever fall out with them. I've had broadcasters tell me things that I know are not true because I do live shows. We used to do this thing. Ian and I used to do pantos together at the Belgrade in Coventry. He played the day, he still does it. He played the day, I play the comic. And we used to find if the kids were getting rowdy in a performance, what we used to do is we started whispering the lines. Kids are too nosy. There's no point trying to shout over them. If we whispered the lines, they all went quiet because they wanted to hear what we were saying. And I remember telling a broadcaster this, and they said, "No, that's not true." I said, "No, we did it." "No, you didn't." It's literally that kind of much denial. It's like, okay, I'm not having the argument with you about it. You know, they just don't. They don't know their audience half the time. Which again came down to, I guess, as a rule of thumb, if you've done a lot of stuff and you've done your own stuff, trust yourself. Trust what you know to be true from what you've done. You know, don't let anybody tell you that if something you've experienced as being the truth of something, don't let somebody tell you you can't do that. You'd be surprised how many people try to. Trying to think if there's anything else more specifically for you guys I can be helpful on. It's late, we're all nodding off now. Go on, Nick.
Hello, I'm still here. I've got me, yeah. I just wanted briefly want to touch on your sort of anecdotes of touring larger scale theatre and things that differ between the large scale tours and the smaller scale stuff.
Do you know what? Apart from the scale, it's the same job. And I'm not saying that to be glib about it. You know, it comes back to all the things we've touched on today. You've got to make sure that the crew are happy, because when we got the CBeebies tours, for example, down to a model where we would tour 14 venues in roughly maybe 18 or 19 days. And you would get into a venue at 6 o'clock in the morning, the show would be put up, and you would do the first show at 1 o'clock. And then you do another show at 5 o'clock. And if it was a venue like Nottingham, where you're only going to stay there for two performances, or quite a few of the arenas, you would then start the get out at 6 o'clock in the evening. You'd take the show down, you would travel overnight, and at 6 o'clock the following morning, it would get put up in the next venue. A really, really tight schedule, but doable schedule. And the skill comes in knowing what's possible, knowing what isn't too strenuous. You have to work hard to do that, and you can only get away with it because you're only working people for up to 3 weeks. That's a pretty punishing schedule, and after 3 or 4 weeks of that, it starts to get dangerous because people are getting tired. But fundamentally, if you like, the stages are the same. You have a show in a certain size of venue. You've got to be able to take that show down, pack it away, travel it to the next venue, put it up again safely, ready to do the next performance. And if that performance involves 2 chairs and a harmonica, or involves 20 pre-rig lighting truss, some venue staging, and an 8-meter by 20-meter LED screen, all you're doing is putting more people on the job to make sure that you can achieve that in a certain amount of time. So it's a very logical process in a sense. And you have to learn that. You have to learn that by building up to it and being part of those jobs. Which again, I'm not trying to make too little of it, but it's there's a guy that I work with, a guy called Nigel Mosley, who is the best technical stage manager I've ever worked with, because he is absolutely fastidious about working out what hours it's going to take people to do certain jobs and putting the team together to be able to do it. You see what I mean? You need those people around you. And actually, maybe this is helpful. I think when you do things small scale and you're building up, the temptation is to try and do absolutely everything yourself. I never try and do a spreadsheet because I hate them. I go snowblind when I see them. I know roughly where the figures will come in, but I leave that to the people who like doing spreadsheets. Also because it takes my brain away from the stuff that I enjoy doing, which is a creative side of it. If you can find like-minded friends who've got slightly different skill sets to you, that always helps, just to enable you to all play to your strengths, I think. And you probably all found that in teams where you get that dream team of people who love doing what they do, and suddenly it all gels. People like that and teams like that are like gold dust. And you know, Josh Circus, I mean, like, talk about skills which involve a lot of trust. You know, when you've got that trusted people, there's something really satisfying about working in a team that you trust like that. So hold those people close when you find them. And I guess there's an element of just learning what you're good at yourself, isn't there, as well? And not trying to do everything. Was that what you wanted, Nick? I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I answered.
No, that was fine. No, it was also, I remember a comment you made last time about touring, because quite often, you know, touring allowances, you'll have actors sorting out their own digs, but you never do that with the big gigs, do you?
Oh no, with the arenas, and too, you'll be familiar with this maybe. But what we do with the arena tours usually is it's basically like a rock and roll tour. You have on-site caterers, mainly because where most of the arenas are, there isn't a lot of very handy places to go and eat or get a cheap bite to eat. And you put everybody up in hotels, again, because you don't want people dispersing to every part of the strange city every 24 hours, because people will get lost, you will just lose people. So what you do is you do the shows, you transport everybody on tour buses, you cater for everybody. So everybody's in, and you put everybody up. So everybody's in the venue together, everybody is close on hand. There just isn't time to have, you know, 50 people all finding their own way to digs and getting checked into their digs and then coming back. It's just a way of keeping the whole body of the show together. The shows that we're looking at, I mean, oh God, we're just putting together a show, Polar Express, which we're trying to raise some money for now. If any of you have got £8.5 million down the back of your sofa, just let me know. Don't, scares the life out of me. And Nigel came to me the other day and said, Will, he said, we've got to tour 87 people. I said, okay, we might have to try and address that. But that's what you're looking at with these big shows, is how do you get that many people around, and how do you get them all with enough sleep and enough food and enough time to do what they're going to do, you know? There's tours where the follow spot operators would also be the truck drivers. And that all sounds fine, but actually what you're asking people to do is to be doing the shows and then to be driving the whole show to the next venue and then to be doing the shows again. It comes a point where it's like, well, you know, if you do need to let them sleep at some point in that equation. But it's like every industry. There are patterns that people fall into. There are familiar patterns and well-trodden paths and precedents that you can go to. Rock and roll is brutal as well, you know, so a lot of people do rock and roll on that circuit. You must have had a lot of rock and roll people coming in for the events, I would imagine, Tui.
Yeah, we do. We have particularly our truckies that we've used, you know, drive when we were driving sets and stuff all around Europe, and then have some great stories and some great T-shirts.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether the tachograph was a blessing or a curse. When one of the shows I was doing, the bloke, I can't drive anymore. My tacho's run out.
Yeah, I've got to stop. I've literally got to stop. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, now I think actually it's a blessing, because, of course, otherwise, you know, driving whatever it was, a 12.5-ton truck around the streets isn't. I mean, the knackered isn't very good. But cool. Has anybody got any sort of final questions? I'm aware of the fact that we haven't had a break. I'm also aware of the fact that you've been at it all day, Will.
Don't worry.
Everyone's aware that everyone that's involved in this course is a working producer. You know, we're actually all out there doing stuff. You know, we're doing Joseph's coming in on Thursday, who's working with Elton John at the moment. Joe Smith, who's, you know, chief executive of Stage One. So he's just finished with Come From Away, so that's anyway. Yeah, he's been a few. You know, we've had to sort of reappoint him a few times. But so, has anyone got any sort of final? Well, I know someone's got another call at 10 anyway. Any other final words or questions or comments for Wilhelm?
I just want to say thank you. Yeah.
You're very, very welcome. I hope I didn't waffle on too much, and I hope it was useful.
I think it was really useful because I'm someone who has been lucky enough to start creating their own opportunities. And I think I've always found that quite daunting and, I don't know, worried about imposter syndrome and thinking I'm not doing the right thing. So to hear from someone else that that's the right thing to be doing is really good validation.
I think, do you know what? I think it's the people who find their way through in this business are the people who do stuff. You know, you'd always find the story where their career fell into their lap. Good luck to them, they're lucky. But the people who do stuff, not only do you learn by doing it, you're also doing stuff. You know, it's you're doing what you love to do.
That's quite funny. That's actually what we were talking about just before you arrived, Will.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Nothing comes from nothing is one of my favorite terms that, you know, nothing comes from nothing. Anybody else got any sort of last? All right. Well, so thanks so much, Will. I mean, I realise which hall was it, just out of interest?
Which what, sorry?
On the South Bank. What was the venue?
Oh, Queen Elizabeth.
So I've got my eye on that as well.
Have you? Yeah. So we're doing the factory in Manchester, which is this monolith of a venue. My God, it's massive. The Pross Arch is something like 22 meters high. It's like,
Wow.
it's like there's clouds underneath it. You know, it's just bizarre. it's huge. And then the show's meant to be going to Queen Elizabeth next summer. So Christmas in Manchester, next summer on the South Bank, and then hopefully it will be touring after that. So
I'll have to pick your brains as how they are to work with the national.
Yes,
not national South Bank.
Oh, what you mean the Queen Elizabeth or
yeah, both. It's a dry hire, isn't it?
Yeah, Mark who runs it is lovely. He's the guy who was running the Manchester International Festival, and he's really championed this show that I'm doing. Yeah, so I like him a lot. I like the venue a lot. And there's a guy called Griff Reese doing the music, who's lead singer of the Super Furry Animals. Don't know if you know him. And my God, he's one of those kind of very quirky geniuses, and I'm just waiting to see what he's going to come up with for it, which would be a fun part of the journey. So we'll see what we end up with. An
exciting part. Yeah, I think they're doing a large-scale Shakespeare there in this next summer. But cheers, Matt. Well, thanks so much for doing this again.
Not at all.
We've got to catch up next time you're in town, now that people are meeting up again. And because also the reason I met you signed, you might not remember, years ago you signed me as you were my sponsor at Soho House.
That's right.
My liver really hates you, but the rest of me loves you. The rest of me loves you. So yeah, thanks so much, Will.
Very well. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, we'll speak soon.
Yeah, take care, everybody.
Thanks, mate. Thanks a
so
lot.
much.
Thank
you.
See you now.
Bye, mate. Good luck with the dogs.
Yes.
And the strange animal child that was behind the door.
Who was that? Take care. See you then.
Thanks, mate. Bye. Cool. I hope you found that useful. He's a good lad, as well, as because as you've heard, he's done it. Been there, done that. Got a t-shirt. I used to, the only thing I disagreed with is that it doesn't do spreadsheets, but spreadsheets are our friends. Spreadsheets are our friends.
I could see your face as he said that. You were like, what?
Don't be such. But the glorious thing about Will is he's always had other people. So, I mean, I don't know if you mentioned at one time when I nipped out, at one point we were actually going to get involved with pitching the Tweenies. I mean, that far ago, but I was too busy trying to get people to come and see plays in a pub in Birmingham. But he's always had, he was talking about the chap that he does pantomime with. There's always been someone else that he's kind of done it with. But it's interesting experience, quite good for me as well, because I'm about to pitch a TV idea. 6-part TV drama, darling. Okay, so has anyone got any other little problems or questions? Well, thanks for being so understanding. As I say, as you heard, Will, he wasn't swinging the lead. He literally just arrived back home. And then Thursday, Joe Smith will be talking generally, I think, about just getting shows into the West End. And again, the whole point of these sessions is really just to, take the stuff in and have a little think about what they're saying and where they're going and where you think that might move you next. But he's absolutely right. Nothing comes from nothing. All you got to do is do it. so all right. Thanks for the late nights and no breaks. I hope you probably didn't need to. You'd be starving to death, would you?
No, I did eat before because that was good. It was an 8 o'clock start, but my tea is like really cold now. Really,
I've started to use decaf, so it's well, but all right. Well, we'll so have a nice few days anyway, and I'll see you on Thursday at usual time, usual channel. Oh, we better stop the recording as well now. So thanks a lot, guys. See you on Thursday.
Josh, I hope you had a calmer week.
Yeah, Josh. I hope. Yeah.
We have a house and we're moving this weekend.
Good.
Oh wow, good.
It's going to be legal. I'm going to have a legal landlord, and my mum. Oh my god! So I walked in and my mum was like, "I've adopted you a dog."
What?
So I've been like with this chihuahua, like, hello.
Are you allowed to take pets to your new place?
No.
No.
I just yeah, so I can't take him, but I'm like, who on earth adopts someone a dog without even asking?
And did you say, actually, Mum, I've got nowhere to live either, so
You can adopt me.
But the child's fine.
Oh good. Well, yeah, so hopefully it'll be a bit calmer anyway.
Yeah.
Oh.
So maybe on Thursday, and then the week after I'll be in a different room. I'll have a different backdrop.
Yeah. Well, look forward to it. All right, guys. So see you on Thursday then. And
Normal time, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, normal
Perfect.
time, 7. And we'll take the break at 8, so you can sort out your dinner and
Thank you.
see you then, guys.
Take care. Thank